I just made a video about who should be the next head football coach at Northwestern. They currently have an opening for head coach because Pat Fitzgerald was fired after allegations of a hazing scandal going on at Northwestern. This got me thinking about all the scandals that have occurred in college football. Scandals have played a big part in college football becoming the sport that it is today. For the most part, these scandals are relatively minor transgressions that only turned into major problems when the cover-up was blown. Jim Tressel might still be coaching at Ohio State if he had come forth earlier with his knowledge about players selling memorabilia for tattoos. It is a similar situation for several of the academic and pay-for-play issues in this video. The same cannot be said when it comes to Jerry Sandusky, Colorado's mid-2000s recruiting tactics, and everything that has happened at Baylor over the past few years. Those are crimes against humanity that cannot and should not be forgotten anytime soon. In this video, we are covering major scandals in college football since the year 2000. We will list the scandals in chronological order in this video of when the story first broke. Scandals that led to vacant wins, firings, or bowl bans were considered. There are a few notable omissions in this video, such as Todd Gurley being suspended 4 games at Georgia for selling autographed memorabilia, Cam Newton's dad allegedly asking for more than $100,000 for Cam to play at Mississippi State, and even though no one was fired or suspended and no wins were vacated, we unfortunately won't be diving into the Jameis Winston Crab Lakes fiasco. Let's look into our first scandal, regarded as the Albert Means pay-for-play at the University of Alabama. Back in 1999, before most recruiting sites even existed, Albert Means was regarded as one of the biggest high school prizes in the entire country. Wealthy businessman and Alabama booster Logan Young made sure his team got the supposed can't-miss defensive tackle, paying $150,000 to Means' high school coach to steer him towards the Crimson Tide. According to longtime Tennessee booster Roy Adams, this was anything but a one-time investment by Young. In 2005, Adams told ESPN's Mike Fish, during that 10-year period over drinks and wine, Logan made no secret of how he was able to buy players and stuff like that. I knew. I had to cover up for him. Taking a look at the aftermath of this, allegations about the pay-for-play scandal first surfaced in January 2001, after which Means transferred to Memphis. Though Alabama only got to use him for 7 games, it received a 2-year bowl ban and 5 years probation, as well as a reduction of 21 scholarships. Kentucky also received a 1-year bowl ban and 3 years probation, in part for paying Lang. Interestingly, the man who benefited the most from all of it wasn't even required by the courts to forfeit the bribe money or serve any jail time. Other than 2 years probation and a meager fine, Lang just had to adjust his income tax returns and serve 500 hours of community service. The lasting impact was that Alabama struggled for the next few years and went through another scandal, this one involving textbooks, that resulted in 21 vacated wins from 2005 to 2007. Obviously, the Crimson Tide have been doing quite well over the past decade under head coach Nick Saban, but there were more than a few years at the beginning of the millennium in which it looked like Alabama's glorious days would never return. The next scandal in chronological order involves Gary Barnett and the University of Colorado. In Gary Barnett's 7 years as a head coach at Colorado, he and the program came under fire multiple times for their handling of assault allegations. Per the Associated Press, an 8-person panel concluded in May 2004 that alcohol and drugs were used to lure football recruits to the University of Colorado, and lax oversight by the top university officials was to blame. Earlier in the year, the program had received its 6th assault allegation against a player in the span of about 3 years. One of the 6 was made by former place kicker Katie Hanita, who Barnett called an awful player who couldn't kick the ball through the uprights. The aftermath of this was following the comments about Hanita. Barnett was placed on paid administrative leave. However, he was reinstated a few months later and coached for another year and a half before being forced out. On a related note, Colorado was fined $100,000 in 2007 and placed on probation for 2 years for inadvertently undercharging over 100 athletes for meals over the course of 6 years spanning Barnett's tenure as the head coach. The lasting impact of Barnett's scandal was that Colorado had great recruiting poll in the early 2000s, ranking 22nd nationally in 2002 and 19th in 2003. But that ship sailed in a hurry as the scrutiny of recruiting tactics increased, and it only got worse as the team sputtered through 10 consecutive losing seasons. Though there weren't any bowl bans or major penalties imposed, the Buffaloes became less than a shell of what they used to be in the 1990s. The next scandal is one that almost everyone has heard of, and that involved Reggie Bush and the University of Southern California. In April 2006, just over 3 months after Reggie Bush had won the Heisman, reports began to surface that he had received hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of gifts and benefits while at USC. It is important to note that the money didn't come from the school. The scandal began when sports marketer Michael Michaels went public with allegations about Bush's parents not paying $54,000 worth of rent for the year they spent in a house Michaels owned in Southern California. In 2007, Bush reached a settlement with Michaels for at least $200,000. Bush later reached agreement with a fellow sports marketer, Lloyd Lake, who was seeking nearly $300,000 worth of repayments. The aftermath was that after 4 years of investigations into Bush and similar allegations about basketball star O.J. Mayo, the NCAA ruled in 2010 that USC had to vacate wins from 2004 and 2005, including a BCS national championship. The Trojans were also given a 2-year postseason ban, faced a significant 3-year reduction in scholarships, and were placed on probation for 4 years. The school later agreed to return its copy of Bush's Heisman Trophy 1 month later, and Bush voluntarily forfeited his trophy in September when it became clear that he was going to otherwise forcibly lose it. The lasting impact is that it took a long time for them to fully recover, largely because recruiting from 2012 to 2014 was made so difficult by NCAA sanctions. As far as Bush is concerned, it is as if he never played college football. The 2005 Heisman remains vacated to this day, and as Gary Klein wrote for the Los Angeles Times in 2014, Bush is a non-entity at USC, nowhere to be seen around campus. The next scandal rocked an entire university, and we will call this scandal cheating at Florida State. A widespread cheating scandal rocked Florida State to its core in 2007. A total of 61 student athletes in 10 sports were implicated, many of which were on the football team. As a result, 23 Seminoles were barred from competing in the 2007 Music City Bowl, including several starters. Quote, a significant portion of the academic fraud violations involved a music course offered to students without incident for more than 10 years before its academic integrity was compromised in the fall of 2006, resulting in an academic fraud occurring during this time as well as the 2007 spring and summer semesters, the infraction report said. The aftermath was that Florida State was placed on 4 years probation and faced a slight reduction in scholarships, but the vacation of wins was the big whammy. 12 games in which ineligible players competed were removed from Bobby Bowden's career win total, destroying any hope he had of bypassing Joe Paterno on the all-time win list. The lasting impact was, though it was a huge story at the time, the lasting impact is essentially nil. Bowden retired after the 2009 season, which is something he likely would have done at the age of 80 regardless of the scandal, and the Seminoles seamlessly transitioned into the Jimbo Fisher era, winning 10 games in the first season after the sanctions were levied. The next scandal takes us to the University of North Carolina. Prior to what was supposed to be a great 2010 season, Greg Little, Robert Quinn, and former 5-star recruit Marvin Austin were kicked off the team, with the former two ruled permanently ineligible for accepting cash and other benefits from sports agent Terry Watson. Those allegations also included that a tutor was writing papers for Little and Austin while trying to convince them to sign with Watson's agency. Charges against Jennifer Lauren Thompson were eventually dropped in 2014. A total of 13 players were suspended for the start of the year, contributing to yet another 5-loss season as the impermissible benefits coincided with investigation into academic fraud at the university, including allegations fake classes were created to aid player eligibility. The aftermath was that head coach Butch Davis was fired in July 2011. 2 months after, the school vacated all 16 of its wins from the 2008 and 2009 seasons. Not satisfied with this self-imposed sanctions, the NCAA added a postseason ban for 2012, 3 years probation, and a reduction of 15 scholarships, but the Tar Heels were able to dodge the dreaded lack of institutional control. The lasting impact was that UNC hovered around 500 for the next 4 years and has struggled to reel in players like it did under Butch Davis. The Tar Heels had the 5th best class in the nation in 2009, but they haven't come anywhere close to that level since. They did match a school record with 11 wins in 2015, though the scandal didn't permanently break them. Let's take a look at one of the more odd scandals, Tattoogate at the Ohio State University. 6 Ohio State players, most notably Terrell Pryor, received suspensions for part of the 2011 season for selling championship rings and jerseys in exchange for tattoos. But the real scandal didn't begin until a few months later when head coach Jim Tressel confessed to knowing that this was going on but doing nothing about it. The aftermath was that in March 2011, Tressel initially suspended for 2 games and fined $250,000, but he abruptly resigned in May, which was followed a week later by Pryor withdrawing from the university for the supplemental NFL draft. That December, the NCAA issued Tressel a 5-year show-cause penalty, effectively blackballing him from coaching college football again until the end of 2016. Ohio State was given a 1-year postseason ban, vacated wins from the 2010 season, and received a slight, brief reduction in scholarships. The lasting impact was that the Buckeyes went 6-7 in the 2011 season, but they have been more than fine since then, posting a 61-6 record with 3 consecutive trips to the college football player under Urban Meyer. The one lasting impact here is the way we now view the man who was once a legend in a sweater vest. Tressel could now be hired without any penalty, but his name is barely a whisker in coaching carousel. despite leading the Buckeyes to 6 consecutive Big Ten regular season titles the last time we saw him at the SBF level. The next scandal involves a Ponzi scheme in the University of Miami. While orchestrating a Ponzi scheme that swindled investors out of nearly $1 billion, a crime for which he was sentenced to 20 years later in federal prison, Nevin Shapiro reinvested some of that money in Miami's sports programs as a booster from 2002 to 2010. In 100 hours of jailhouse interviews, Shapiro told Yahoo's Charles Robinson he provided impermissible benefits in the form of cash, cars, yacht trips, jewelry, meals, and prostitutes to at least 72 Miami athletes, most notably, in terms of NFL success, Vince Wilfork, Sean Taylor, John Beeson, Devin Hester, and Willis McGahee. The aftermath was a week after Robinson's investigation was published. Miami declared 13 players ineligible for the start of 2011 season, though several of those players had their suspension either reduced or entirely dropped. Miami self-imposed a 2-year bowl ban and reduced allowable paid recruiting visits and evaluations by about 20%. The NCAA placed the program on 3 years probation and reduced scholarships by 3 per year for the next 3 years. The lasting impact was Miami was already a far cry from the dynasty it used to be. In fact, the Hurricanes fared better in the 6 seasons after the scandal broke than in the 5 years before. Aside from a few assistants getting 2-year show cause penalties and Miami being remembered as the home of the biggest booster brouhaha of the decade, the revenue lost from the 2-year bowl ban seems to be the only noteworthy impact. Next is perhaps the most well-known scandal, and that is Jerry Sandusky and Penn State University. In November 2011, former Penn State defensive coordinator Jerry Sandusky faced charges related to allegations that he abused young boys in 1990s and 2000s, most of which he met through the Second Mile, the charity he founded in 1977. In June 2012, he was found guilty on 45 counts of child sexual abuse and sentenced to 30 to 60 years in prison. According to a report by Penn Live's Charles Thompson in 2016, head coach Joe Paterno was told about the abuse as early as 1976, which would mean it occurred for more than 3 decades. The aftermath was, in addition to what amounts to life in prison for Sandusky, the public perceptions of Penn State and Paterno were irreparably marred over the course of the arraignment and trial. Paterno announced his retirement days after the scandal broke and passed away a few months later. Once regarded as one of the greatest coaches in college football history, Paterno died as a vilified man outside of State College because of the possibility that he knew what was going on and looked the other way. Shortly after Sandusky's trial ended, the NCAA hit Penn State with a $60 million fine, a 4-year postseason ban, scholarship reductions, and a mandate to vacate all wins from 1998 to 2011. Also, the Second Mile dissolved in 2016. The lasting impact was the postseason ban was eventually reduced to just 2 years, and Paterno was recredited with 111 wins. It only took 4 years of consistency above 500 play before Penn State was back in the top 10 of the polls and playing in the Rose Bowl. Despite the reduction in scholarships, the Nittany Lions were still able to recruit well and didn't stay down for long, but it's something that will forever be tied to Paterno's legacy. The last scandal is the assaults at Baylor. The most public names involved in Baylor's ongoing assault scandal have been Tevin Elliott, Sean Oakman, and Sam Uwacha, but this runs much deeper than just a few isolated incidents. According to Mark Tracy and Dan Barry of the New York Times, at least 31 players were alleged to be involved in at least 52 assaults from 2011 to 2014, per John Clune, an attorney representing some of the victims. And new accusations and lawsuits seem to be coming out every month. Per Paul Levine and Mark Schlaboff of ESPN, as of this past May in 2017, there were 6 federal lawsuits pending against the university on behalf of 15 women who say they were assaulted or physically assaulted by students, including many former football players. The aftermath was head coach Art Braz was fired, athletic director Ian McCaw was sanctioned and placed on probation before resigning, President Kenneth Starr was demoted before resigning, several others either voluntarily left the university or were forced to do so. But the biggest one may have been coordinator Patty Crawford. She resigned after less than 2 years at the position, saying on CBS this morning, "I think Baylor set me up to fail from the beginning. The harder I worked, the more resistant I got." As far as the football players were concerned, when the summary of the Pepper-Hamilton report was released in May 2016, many recruits requested release from their national letters of intent. 5-star 2015 signee Jared Stidham transferred out of the program. The lasting impact is that it's important to remember that the scandal, as with Penn State and Colorado's has far more severe consequences than those pertaining to a college football team's ability to win, and the lives of the victims and their families should really be the focus here. In this video, we have covered many of the major scandals to rock the college football world since the year 2000. Is there a scandal that comes to mind when it comes to the region of college football that you cheer on? Let us know in the comments what comes to mind when you think of college football scandals. And as always, thank you for watching and supporting the channel.